Good morning, good morning, good morning. And here we are back at the White Hart after a morning yesterday at Clevedown, which is a sheltered housing complex run by the Sussex Housing Trust. It's on the fringes of Lewes, down by the prison. A famous prison, I may say. There are more top names being held in that prison than you can shake a stick at. So perhaps I being quite close to it was very appropriate yesterday. But anyway, we're back at the White Hart Hotel, home, well, at least location of Tom Paine's Rights of Man, which has had such an overpowering effect on democracy and our way of life. And it's amazing that, like a lot of people, a prophet is without honor in his own country. So many people make such an impact on our world, and we never hear anything more about them. It's like you can say to somebody Faraday's cage, and they look at you. You can say the same to the same person, Logie Baird, and they all know that he invented television. But in fact, it was Faraday who did most of the work ahead of time, funded by Mad Jack Fuller, a man who was a local MP and a multi-millionaire. And where did he get his money from? Slavery. And have the wokes actually pounced on him? No, not a bit of it. And nor should they. Because actually, as somebody said in conversation yesterday, is just about the entire country. And our entire history is based on slavery. Where do we stop and where do we start? We know that it's not right, but surely stopping it today is the most important thing. And white slavery, female slavery, slavery of less developed societies is rampant. Which bloody statues do the wokes actually pull down to stop that? They don't even try. It isn't fashionable. It's much easier to have a go at 18th and 19th century business people. What hypocrites. What absolute bloody hypocrites. Now, it's all very well for me to sit here and say hypocrites, because I'm quite sure that in many of the things that I believe or expound or whatever, and I'm privileged to have this vehicle to be able to do so, I'm a hypocrite as well. But at least I realize that my hypocrisy tempers what I do. I don't pull down statues. I don't alter the English language. I don't stick my trousers with chewing gum to bridges. I try hard to be as objective as I possibly can and to do away with isms. And if that's not enough, then I'll have to try harder. But what a nonsense. What a nonsense these people are in trying hard to say how hypocritical our leaders were, or our business leaders were in the 18th and 19th century, because they made their money from slavery. And what we must do is dishonor them. That's absolute rubbish, absolute nonsense. How did I get onto that? I don't know. But I opened up with all sorts of things in mind. And I better, just for safety's sake, go to the newspapers, because there's plenty to keep Rishi Sunak busy today. And we should, here we go. Let's take the newspaper front pages, the headlines, shall we? The Times. It's got a picture on the front page of King Charles, Queen Camilla, President Macron, and Mrs. Macron. I must say, in all the photographs that I've seen, Mrs. Macron looks like a very, very unhappy lady. As I think it looks to me as if she's staying with her husband for his position, rather than because she's overwhelmingly in love with him. I'm sorry, Mrs. Macron, if I'm doing you an injustice, but for God's sake, if you do like the guy, smile at him, because your body language is enormously negative. And much as I am not a great fan of Camilla, Hers is very positive indeed. And I have to say that she is turning into something of a stately queen. Just shows you how impartial I am when it comes to the evidence. But anyway, the Times is not about that. It's about Sunak's green targets gamble. All right, a speech delivered yesterday by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced exemptions and delays to several targets in the government's net zero strategy. The strategy, which is enshrined in law, commits the UK to eliminating its contribution to the overall amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere by 2050. The Times quotes Mr. Sunak saying he would not impose unacceptable costs on households, but notes that the move faces opposition even from some Tory MPs. The Eye, once again, it's got a picture on the front page. Mrs. Macron is looking slightly happier, but she's turned away from the other three. I'm no expert on body language, but it seems to me as if she is not a very happy lady. Not a very happy lady at all. But the headline is Sunak's net zero election gamble. The Green pledge U-turn sparks Tory fury. The Eye calls the changes, which include a delay to the ban on new petrol cars from 2030 to 2035, and a 9-year extension to the phase out of new gas boilers, an election challenge to Labour. It says Mr. Sunak has insisted net zero can be achieved with a more pragmatic approach. It also quotes former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, accusing him of faltering on climate change, and former Tory Environment Minister Zac Goldsmith calling for an election. Westminster is still the hotbed of all sorts of rubbish and nonsense, which in the main ignores what's happening out there in the marketplace amongst the populace. Although I must confess is that the cost of living is a key one. And if this is going to ease back on seeing the cost of living zoom, then okay, then Sunak has got it right. I'm not saying that the long-term development of zero emissions isn't totally important. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that asking us to pay for it after we've been through such absolute hell for almost 5 years now, it is electoral suicide, and I quite understand why he's doing it. The Guardian, a green bonfire as PM rose back on net zero targets. The move is one of Mr. Sunak's biggest reversals since taking office, and part of an attempt to put his government on a more radical path ahead of the next election. The paper says the change has been met with despair by climate scientists, and quoted former US Vice President and climate campaigner Al Gore saying the government is doing the wrong thing. Financial Times. Sunak sparks business backlash after the U-turn on net zero pledges. The Financial Times says Mr. Sunak has ignited a business backlash and quotes Lisa Brankin, the chair of Ford UK, saying the business needs 3 things from the UK government: ambition, commitment, and consistency. A relaxation of 2030 would undermine all 3. The paper adds that Labour has pledged to reinstate the 2030 deadline for petrol cars if it wins the next election. Incidentally, just to prove that I am not A1 or AI, I'm still here. And I wish in fact, we've got a bright young man, Ashley, who is taking over the administration of Mirador, which is badly needed because I spend all my time really on the production and the program side of things. And he is looking at how I can actually show some of these front pages. I know it can be done because I did it once and then I couldn't remember how. There we go. Those are the things that when you're very small, you have to put up with for a while. But eventually you get around to fixing them. And we're getting around to it. So anyway, yes, I am still there. I got down to, which paper did I get down to? The Guardian, I think, wasn't it? No, the FT, wasn't it? Yes, because here is the Sun. The Sun, Rishi delays bans on new cars and boilers and scraps meat and flight tax in Echo pushback. Given us a break, it says. BRAKE, a play on words. Given us a break. And it says, the Sun, the paper says, drivers now have a 5-year reprieve from going electric. Probably just as well, it ain't working. The Daily Express, the King ushers in a new entente cordiale. And along with other papers, the front page has got a picture of the King and Queen and President Macron and Mrs. Macron. In every picture, she's either looking as miserable as sin or she's looking away from her husband. All is not well in that camp, I fear. Honest Rishi, the nation won't and can't pay net zero bill. Which paper is this? Oh, this is the Express. Right. Okay. The Express quotes the Prime Minister saying he has pushed back green policies that hard-up voters cannot afford in the cost of living crisis. The Mail, Camilla dazzles on a night of Parisian glamour. No, that's not the headline one would expect. But I must say that she does look quite stylish and quite glamorous. I'll spare families the ruinous cost of net zero, vowed Rishi. That's the headline, the front page. In the Mail, the Prime Minister takes on eco zealots in a bold move that could transform Tory fortunes. The Prime Minister has vowed to shatter a consensus that has seen successive governments impose green targets with little regard to cost. The paper says the change could transform Tory fortunes ahead of the coming election. Could. The Daily Telegraph, once again, the King and Queen and the President and First Lady and I give them a due, mind you, of course, they're trained all their lives for it, is that the King and Camilla look totally relaxed as opposed to Macron and Mrs. M, who are looking ill at ease and certainly not at each other. Sunak spares public net zero pain. Let's see what he says. The Daily Telegraph notes that in his speech, Mr. Sunak said the change was the first in a series of policy changes that he plans to announce as battle lines are drawn for the next election. The paper also echoes other reports about discontent among some of the Prime Minister's own MPs, saying the change has reopened the Tory Civil War. Well, there we go. Certainly the Tories have been at war, but then again, so were Labour, and I suggest that that's brimming under the surface too. Plague on both their houses. In fact, all their houses, I would say. The Daily Mirror. We've got a change in headline at long last. The Daily Mirror. End 70 years of nukes cover-up, it says. Fight for access to blast test medical records. A legal battle by veterans of Britain's nuclear test program to gain access to records of historic blood tests leads the Daily Mirror. Campaigners say those involved in the tests have suffered health consequences, including cancers and or children from. No, there's nobody there. I'm on my own son this morning. What I was after is a drink of water. But one of the things that you just let's take another. We'll take another brief rest from the headlines, and there I am. I'm not AI. I am pinch me and I squeal. Hey! I am real, and I'm reading the headlines from the papers direct. But one of the things that we note is there is a serious issue when all the newspapers run their front pages on the same story, and they've just about all run them this morning. And we've just hit now the first one that hasn't, and it's the Daily Mirror, which says end 70 years of nukes cover up. And basically what it says is that there are records which show that the nuclear tests created health consequences, including cancer, and children born with birth defects because of the radiation they were exposed to. One veteran, an 86-year-old John Morris, tells the paper he just wants the truth. Elsewhere, the paper covers the King's trip to France and with a star-studded state banquet that included Mick Jagger, the rock and royal, the paper puns. Metro, the French connection. Bulger murderer gets parole bid. Free him and he'll kill a child again. This is in reference to James Bulger, who was one of the two youngsters who stoned a little boy to death some years ago now, and were put away for life. And now that they are actually reaching maturity, they're talking about releasing them. And of course, that's always going to create a storm. The Metro reports that John Venables, who served 8 years for the murder of 2-year-old James Bulger in 1993, has been granted a new parole hearing. Venables was previously freed on license and given lifelong anonymity. But in 2017, he was jailed again for having child abuse images on his computer. The paper quotes Bulger's mother saying, Denise Fulcher. Let's see here. The paper quotes Bulger's mother, Denise Fulcher, telling the parole panel, when you look at Venables' file, just remember what he's capable of. Well, it's every right as mother of the victim to remind people about that. And apparently it is by far from faultless. The Daily Star. Boffins claim froth on beer makes pints twice as good. Well, it's good to know, isn't it? Do you want a flake in that love? I heard they're not talking about the beer. I simply got a what do I know this? A Twix this morning. I normally get a Twix this morning, and it says, "Do you want a flake in that, lovers?" Well, no, I don't want a flake in my Twix, but I am almost hooked. If I'm hooked on anything first thing in the morning, it's a Twix. I think they taste very well. They eat nicely. They do leave more chocolate on your hand than on the bar, but nonetheless, that's you can put up with that. And it is the only thing that the Star shows this morning. It is lacking in. Hang on. Daily Star says scientists in Japan have proved that a big frothy head on your pint makes it taste better. Now, top it up, please, barman, the paper says. Well, yes, why not? Why not? Shall we see if we can get up the weather, because it has been rather vicious overnight, and one wonders what is in store for us today. It's certainly lashing down during the night. But today is rain, and oh boy, has it gone chilly. Yes, indeed, it has gone chilly. It is down to a high of 17 degrees. Now, when I came in on my the Red Devil, my little motor scooter, I could feel the distinct change. So it is quite cool. In fact, I'm in just a shirt. I got a gilet on, but I certainly not overdressed for this weather. I need to keep warm, and the highest it's going to be at around 2 o'clock today is 17 degrees, and the lowest it's going to be is 11 degrees. So it's not plummeting to huge depths, but nonetheless, we've got a cool day in offing. We've got at mid-morning, we've got a 32% chance of rain, and again at let's see what time, at 2 o'clock this afternoon, going down to 4 o'clock tonight. Is that right? 1700, 5 o'clock tonight, zero chance of rain, and then it's going to ease off for the rest of the evening. The wind is a gentle breeze, thank goodness, because it's a fierce wind. Driving that rain into you makes life very, very uncomfortable, to say the least. Okay, that's the weather as we know it. We are now it's let's see, 8:23, and on a funny sort of morning. You are watching Mirador Television, and Mirador is out of Lewes in East Sussex, out of the White Hart Hotel, magnificent old hotel, not at everybody's taste, since we get into tubular steel and Swiss-looking concrete. But this one, for me, is my taste. Nice old leather chairs that you can sink into. Charming, lovely, polite ladies looking after you from reception through to the bar. And that's where we broadcast from, the bar in the White Hart Hotel. Now, isn't that innovative? Broadcasting from a bar. Ha ha ha! And on a Tuesday, today is not a Tuesday, I hate to say. On a Tuesday, Kevin, who is the man who looks after all things practical in the hotel, and therefore looks after us as well, comes in at about 9:30 and in the morning and says, "Keith, can I get you to help me?" Of course, Kevin. I will do anything, even though I'm broadcasting. Here is the beer pulled fresh today. I'd like your opinion. So at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, I am able to look everybody in the eye and quite legitimately and quite legally take a drink outside opening hours because it is necessary to get a view on how the beer is, whether it's a good barrel, a bad barrel, no barrel at all. I get to be the arbiter. Absolutely marvelous. Absolutely wonderful. Okay, now, so the main headline is very much about Rishi Sunak, his decision to backpedal on the programs leading to zero emissions. I have to say that one of the things that I think that, of course, they never do it. They'll never do it. Is if we actually said to MPs, please join us on a level playing field. Take the minimum wage. Don't get any perks except what's allowed by tax law for all of us. Don't get extras like cars, rent-free homes, all those sort of things that you have been accused of having for doing very little. And most certainly, if you want bars in the House of Commons, and I'm all for that, but no subsidy for a pint. You pay the going rate. If you actually put all those things in place, whichever party did it, I think, would find that they would win the next election, because it would show some semblance of not living a privileged life, but living the life that the rest of us lead. Yeah, that's what I think. Let's give my voice a rest for a minute or two, shall we? Yes, why not? Let's go to the park, where we always do. Now, there is something that I beat a drum. I beat a drum. Oh, incidentally, I see Stephen Fry. I don't know him terribly well, but from time to time I bump into him in what's known as the Groucho Club, which is the Actors Television People's Club in London. I don't go there very often anymore, but I did go there a fair amount. He would be very affably nod to me and smile, and so at a distance I had a very good relationship with him. And he's been injured. He fell off stage. He was rushed to hospital after falling off 6 feet from a stage at the O2 Arena. He had been speaking at the £495 a ticket CogX Festival when the accident happened. I don't know what CogX is about. It's understood Fry had finished his talk about AI. Oh, very good topic. And was exiting when he tumbled off the edge. The London Ambulance Service confirmed that a man was treated for rib and leg injuries at the O2 before being taken to hospital on Thursday last week. A source says he had to leave in a wheelchair. It is not clear whether Fry is still in hospital. Greenwich Council is considering opening an inquiry while event organisers are investigating. What the hell? Easily done. I have Parkinson's, therefore I misjudge all the time. A couple of weeks or so ago, I misjudged it. Luckily, it was early on a Saturday morning. I misjudged the curb, caught my heel, and went sprawling right in the middle of the road. Luckily, there was only one car coming, and I found it difficult to get up. So the car stopped, and the driver got out and helped me to my feet, and so on and so forth. I still actually can feel some of the bruising, but it is my own damn fault, because I am taught how to walk. I'm taught how to do various movements so that I won't actually tumble and hurt myself. I have to. I recall when I was first diagnosed with Parkinson's, and I went to sort of various meetings at the hospital. Not least of which one was about the therapy, physiotherapy. And during the physiotherapy sessions, I was shown how to lie on the bed so that without any help, when the day came when I lost the use of my legs, which I have now, as I would be able to get up. And the nurse, who was a very pretty 30-year-old, 35-year-old, very nice lady, and so on and so forth. I was very naughty. But she said to me, Keith, which side do you lie on in bed? And I looked at her and I couldn't resist and said, it depends who I'm sleeping with, my dear. She blushed very prettily and then ignored the fact that I was being rude. Anyway, Stephen Fry, injured after a tumble off stage, and I wish him well. I wish him recovery. I do think that in all the scandal and so on that is going on, is that Stephen Fry is one of the nicer people in the acting fraternity. And one must give acknowledgement to people who are nice people. We don't get too many of them, believe me, because in this industry, and I say this industry because I would include myself in it, been in it for 60 years, so I suppose I'd better, is that self-serving, self-ambition without regard to other people is rampant. And I look and I think, when I look at some of the people that I've worked with and I've known, and I think, there, but for the grace of God, go I. But the one thing I don't have is I don't have a litter of bodies over whom I've trod get into the level that I got, and I didn't get to the very top. No, certainly I did not. However, if you oh, excuse me. Oh dear. There we go. See, even stars sneeze. But along the way, I like to think that I've got left people a little bit better at what they do because of my training and sharing my skills. Secondly, that I've got some lifelong friends amongst talented and untalented people because I haven't tried to use them. And three, that as I was about to say, if you count daily broadcasting to 8 million people, then I've reached a fair level of success. So I hope that I'm more like Stephen Fry than I am like. I'm not going to mention some of the people who've got carcasses lying at the bottom of their beds. They know who they are. And what really happens is that they stifle young talent because they can't stand to think that young talent may well develop into rivalry, may well stop them from reaching their own ambitions, may well provide the competition, which we all need. We all need competition to get better. There's a lot of people in the television industry, radio industry, don't see it that way at all. And that's very sad. And that leads me on to what my editorial is this morning. And incidentally, let me tell you that it's at 8:35, that it's going to be much chillier than of late, about 17 degrees. We're broadcasting from the White Hart in Lewes, but we are broadcasting to the world. Mirador is the biggest little television station in the world. It broadcasts all over the place. It's local, but it's not parochial. So that's our mandate. Now, where was I? Yes, I was talking about how Stephen Fry is one of the people that I rather like because, as far as I'm aware, and I know him just a little bit, as far as I'm aware, is he wasn't somebody who trod over the bodies of colleagues and others to get where he got. He got it from pure talent. And I like to think that's where I got to. And because I was good enough, not because I had friends at court. So we put it that way. And in fact, for much of my life, I fought the fact that I sounded English. Oh, tut. In foreign climes, you can't sound English. Puts the viewers off. No evidence it does, but that's how the powers that be, the management, thought about it, and in thinking about it that way is that's the culture that they start. It leads to self-belief. This is our rule, based on evidence. No evidence whatsoever, but it's the way people behave. Anyway, the reason that I'm laboring this point is because there is a story in the Daily Mail today, which is Return of the Class Divide, how your background is now a bigger barrier to social mobility than in the 1980s. And that fills me with horror, sadness, and anger. Because, the fact of the matter is that a lot of the people now in positions of authority a lot of people in positions of authority are bloody useless at what they do. And I don't care whether you're talking about electricity companies, television companies, is the shop next door. Is a lot of them are completely and utterly bloody useless. And why? Because they're not there because of ability. And, I've been a supporter of being good at what you do as being the main arbiter for getting a job or fulfilling a position or leading society. I've forgotten what we call it now. It's a very simple name. But it's what I look for is people who are capable of doing the work, or the potential to do so. And I have a pretty damn good record about training people. In fact, I have a very good record about training people. And I'm able to look at people and say, there, that person will make a good television presenter. And 9 times out of 10, the powers that be, those above me who have made decisions, have altered that decision on a whole variety of things, but certainly not on how good that person is or potentially is. There are 1,000 other reasons. And as a consequence, while we boast, Britain leads in this and that and the other, we don't. What we've got is we've got a whole bunch of people who've been put there because of either favoritism or other silly, non-pertinent reasons. And this article by somebody called Martin Beckford, who is the policy editor, God only knows what a policy editor is here is the first couple of paragraphs. Class is seen as a bigger barrier in Britain than it was 40 years ago. This is shown by a survey that is out today. Researchers found that 3 in 4 people believe their standing in society impacts the opportunities they have in life, while 1 in 3 says it is now very difficult to move up in the world. The latest edition of the British Social Attitudes Report, which has now been running for 40 years, also found that most Britons still see themselves as working class, despite the collapse of traditional industries in recent decades, and the new Labour view that we're all middle class now. Well, economically, I would agree with that. We are all middle class now. There is virtually nobody living in the conditions that the miners lived in at the beginning of the last century, or that the people who worked in the new industrial revolution in the factories, and who are dependent upon their lodgings for the owner of their business. So if they got sick, they were thrown into the streets. No, we've done away with that. Economically, we have moved away from a lower class, middle class, upper class. There is an upper class, if you want to call it that, an elite. Those who go to a public school, those who have their way eased into public service, into the civil service, or into local government, or whatever. Yes, that still very much exists, but it's self-perpetuating. And the reason that the civil service has stumbled around and Britain is in such parlous shape is because of that very, very distinct set of people in our society. Propagated, I may say, by the political class, which has also got itself into a total and utter mess. Your local MP isn't there probably because they're any good. They're there because of ratios. We need a woman in this particular thing because we don't have enough women. That guy is a very good MP or a potential MP. Doesn't matter. In goes the woman. We need a black person here. But doesn't matter. Put him in. We need you can go on indefinitely. And my colleague on this station, Stuart Dolby, a journalist of some 60 years and who's been around the world pursuing his trade, has this theory, and particularly since he knows Boris Johnson's family. And I must say, I've had lunch with Boris Johnson's father. I actually have stared Boris in the eye when he was hiding in my club, when he was foreign secretary. But the fact of the matter is, I agree with Stuart that what Boris did was, as a matter of survival, was surrounded himself with no hopers. So there would be no palace coup, and he wouldn't be turfed out by a mutinous cabinet, particularly since some of his ideas are pretty radical. It all backfired because of COVID and because of one bloody Christmas cake and a half bottle of champagne. The most ludicrous situation for toppling a prime minister. Doesn't matter whether he was deserved being toppled or not. The reasons were ludicrous. And if we can actually use those sort of things to get rid of a senior politician, it just shows you what a stupid state, a parlous state our leadership is in. But anyway, Stuart says, and I agree with him, Boris surrounded himself with second-raters. And when he went, the second-raters moved up into pole position. So actually, the reason that we've had such problems with prime ministers and with parliaments and with governments in the last 5 or 6 years has been because they are these second-raters. And that it's all Boris's fault. I don't necessarily blame him. I think that that sort of thing happens all the time. But the fact is, we have lost sight of promoting people and rewarding people for excellence. We have totally lost sight of it. And yet, government policy is to encourage young people to become entrepreneurs. Start your own business. They offer funds. They offer advice. They don't tell them that the chances of ousting the elite, who aren't elite at all, are very, very small. You start a small shop. No longer do you start a Marks and Spencer's. No longer start a Lewis's. You start a corner shop that will stay a corner shop. And it is ridiculous. But breaking those sort of chains is very, very difficult. But you know, is and this gets away from the fact that this denotes class. I don't think that that's true at all. I've known. I made a point really of being nowhere. I'm classless. I feel comfortable and easy, and I have friends of all stratas of society. And let's put it that way, because I refuse to say that they're class. All stratas of society, and very decent people and hardworking people and nice people they are. But this survey, this story is right. Trying to get off the bottom ladder and into the elite is impossible, because they are all protecting what they have. Not because they are making a contribution, but because this is where duck ponds and £13,000 for COVID and all the other perks, free bars or subsidized bars in the House of Commons, this is where they all come from. They vote for it themselves. We're not having any bloody person with talent moving in and realizing that this is all wrong, that this has got to be reviewed. I'm not necessarily overturned. I love the idea of subsidized bars. Before we got all silly and pious about it, I worked at the BBC, which had BBC clubs, subsidized beer. I worked at ITV, well, yeah, independent television. Clubs, subsidized beer. I worked at Visnews-Reuters. Clubs, subsidized beer. It was all very, very nice. But it has no reflection on whether the workforce were better or worse than anybody else, whether there was a class divide or not. I believe in the rule of law. I believe that our system of government in this country is by far the best that we can possibly have. And in fact, it's modeled really on Plato, who believed that the best form of government was a combination of monarchy, oligarchy, and democracy, which is exactly what we've got in this country. And it works exceptionally well. Our constitutional monarchy is not without its faults, but it's a good, solid form of government, one that almost prevents the overthrow by violent means. And believe me, you can look at the news almost on a daily basis, and somewhere somebody is overthrowing government by force of arms, which is not good for civil society. No matter how just the cause, it is not good. So all those things are as a result of self-preservation, self-ambition, and selfish. Yes, it is difficult to get onto the ladder, but not because you're not any good, but because the system is preventing you, and because we subscribe to the system. Nobody tries to move it. Now let me say this to the modern branch of youth. You want to alter this system. You want to get to the top. What you've got to do is to start altering it at the bottom. We have offered opportunities, the sort of opportunity that I was given when I first started in this business, of you work for free and we'll see how you make out. And then you might be able to move into it. Nowadays, will any youngster work for free to try and better their chances of moving into a higher level of endeavor? I can't speak for other industries specifically, but for media, I most certainly can. And people do not help themselves. They seem to think that if they get a degree that they can walk in and plop that on the table and the doors will open. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth. The youngsters, if they want to alter the system, are going to have to alter their way of thinking. They're going to have to dive in. They have to show the endeavor, the desire to challenge their ability against the reality if they're going to get anywhere. And instead of after 5 or 10 years saying, I could have been that if. Well, you can't be that if you follow the present way of operating. So you want to, in media, in all sorts of other endeavor, you want to reach the top, or you want to even reach the middle, or you want to be included in this new class system. She's not a new class system at all. Change the way you look at things. We are not there waiting to pat you on the head. We're not there to ease your entry into this industry. Maybe we would like to, but we can't. But there are ways and means if you find the right people at the top, which isn't easy in itself. I just remember what I am. I'm a meritocrat. I actually look at people on merit. Are they any good at what they do? If I hobnob with high court judges, it's because I admire the high court judges that I actually meet. If I hobnob with ambassadors, it's because I admire the ambassadors that I hobnob with. And believe me, if you want to see some of the idiots that we put out around the world and the result of how the civil service, the senior civil service, appoints people, you should meet some of the ambassador idiots that I meet. Because I've met a lot, I've been privileged to know some really great ones, some really good ones. But boy, have I known some idiots. Oh, yes. And not only from this country, from most of the other major countries, too. Real idiots. The only people who are more idiotic are the civil servants in other branches than the diplomatic corps. So my rant this morning is, you want something, go after it. Why haven't I got people knocking at my door, small though we are, saying, Keith, I'd like to commit 6 months to you and come and learn everything about this business. I know what your track record is in training. And believe me, it is enviable. It is enviable. There are several major institutions in media who are doing what they're doing as a direct result of my training. Oh, some of them have forgotten, but nonetheless, it's true. And that's there to this day for people to use. And do any of them use it? No. They would much prefer to gurn. They would much prefer to end up behind a bar and say, it wasn't open to me. It was all part of the class system, all part of the elitism. Yes, it is, but only because you let it. On this program last Friday, Melissa Conti, a spectacularly successful lady in the United States, both in broadcasting and in law and in commerce. And she said, the only restrictions that you have are the restrictions which you put in your own mind. You put restrictions in your mind and you tell yourself you can't do something. You can't, and you won't. It's true. Anyway, this isn't an appeal. So people come slipping through the front door and asking us to train them. But as they will anyway. People do not change mindsets just like that. But I think it's time that some of those people who closed the doors, closed the barriers, started to think about opening up for the sake of the country. Let's start to get politicians back in power who are good at being politicians. Let's start to get a civil service that is good at being a civil service. Let's start to get people in industry, managers, and creators, and others who make up our business and financial society, knowing what they're doing and being good at it instead of the bunch of silly, dozy buggers that we've got at the moment. Only you can do it. Or you can sit back and you can moan and you can gurn. And at 30, you'll still be moaning and gurning. And at 40, you'll still be moaning and gurning. And at 60, you'll get your gold watch for doing something that you've hated all your life because you've said to yourself and to others, I could never break in. You can break in anywhere if you set your mind to it. You need to look to find like-minded people, people who will give you a chance, people who will help your endeavor. But it's possible. So when we look at a story like this that says the return of the class divide, how your background is now a bigger barrier to social mobility than in the 1980s, it doesn't have to be true. It's only because we've allowed people who have positions without merit to take charge. And I listen to them and I think, you idiots. Oh, let me use the word, you assholes, because I hear them pontificate. And if I introduce into discussions things such as meritocracy, they sniff. Oh, yeah, meritocracy. Yeah. Yes, of course, meritocracy has its downside, the same as any other system. But when it comes to actually getting a high standard of activity in our society, it is by far the best way, and virtually thrown into touch, kicked into touch, by those who simply want the status quo to remain. Yeah, that's my little hammer for the morning. It's now 8:59. So we're going to take a 10 or 15 minute break, and then we'll be back. I think. Yes, we will. So here we go.